The letter arrived
You
on a
are my
Tuesday morning in
everything.
And
February,
you are
delivered
mine.
by a messenger dressed in black velvet livery that looked like it belonged to another century. Rosalind Thornhill held the cream-colored envelope in her hands and noticed three things immediately. The paper was expensive, the kind her family could no longer afford. The wax seal bore a crest she did not recognize, and her hands were shaking. Not from fear. She had moved past fear 3 months ago when the creditors first knocked. Now there was only arithmetic. Cold, merciless arithmetic. Her father owed £5,000. The house would be sold within 6 weeks. Her sister Evie's dreams of studying art in Paris would die with the sale. Evie, 16 and brilliant, who could capture light on canvas like no one Rosa had ever seen. And their father, already fading into the fog of his illness, would spend his final days in a rented room that smelled of cabbage and regret. Rosa broke the seal. The handwriting was precise, almost unnaturally so. Each letter perfectly formed, as if the writer had all the time in the world. Miss Thornhill, I have a proposition that may interest you. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, the gardens behind St. Margaret's Church. Come alone. I assure you this concerns your family's financial difficulties. You will know me by my gray coat. Duke Sebastian Blackwood. Rosa read it 3 times. Then she walked to the window and looked out at the February rain, turning London streets to rivers of mud. Dukes did not write to penniless girls. They certainly did not meet them in gardens like characters in Gothic novels. But desperate people did not have the luxury of suspicion. She would go. The gardens were empty when Rosa arrived, her second-best dress already soaked through at the hem. She had told no one where she was going. Evie would have insisted on coming. Her father would not have remembered she had left. The rain had stopped, but the world still dripped. Water fell from iron gates and bare branches. Rosa's breath made clouds in the cold air. Then she saw him. He stood beneath an ancient oak, wearing the gray coat from the letter. Tall, perhaps too tall, dark hair touched with silver at the temples. A face that might have been carved from marble, beautiful in the way cliffs are beautiful, distant and unreachable. He did not move as she approached. He simply watched her with eyes that were neither warm nor cold, only impossibly steady. Rosa stopped 3 paces away. Duke Blackwood. Miss Thornhill. His voice was low-cultured, with an accent she could not quite place. Thank you for coming. Your letter mentioned my family's difficulties. Yes. He did not elaborate. The silence stretched between them like a bridge she would have to cross first. Rosa lifted her chin. Then I assume you wish to help, or to take advantage. I should tell you now, my lord, that I am practical enough to accept either depending on the terms. Something flickered in those strange eyes. Not quite amusement, perhaps respect. I need a wife, he said. Rosa blinked. Whatever she had expected, it was not this. I beg your pardon, a wife, for 1 year, after which time you will be free to divorce quietly with a settlement substantial enough to clear your father's debts and provide for your family's future. The rain began again, gentle this time. Rosa felt each drop like a small, cold coin falling on her skin. Why crime? That is not part of the arrangement. Every arrangement requires explanation. Does it? He tilted his head, studying her. I find that curiosity often complicates simplicity. I need a wife for 1 year. You need money. These facts require no explanation, only agreement. Rosa's heart beat faster. This was madness. This was exactly the kind of proposition respectable girls refused. But Rosa had learned 3 months ago that respectability did not pay creditors. What would be expected of me? You would live at my estate, Ravensmoor Manor in the countryside north of London. You would appear at my side at necessary social functions. You would behave as my wife in public. He paused. In private, you would have your own rooms, your own life. I would not interfere. And after 1 year, a quiet divorce, no scandal, you would receive £10,000. 10,000, more than twice what her father owed. Enough to keep Evie in Paris for years. Enough to hire nurses for her father to keep the house to breathe again. Why me? Rosa asked. You are a duke. You could marry anyone. For the first time, something crossed his face that looked almost like pain. Because you are practical, Miss Thornhill. And because you need money more than you need love. That makes you perfect. The words should have stung. Instead, they felt like relief. Honesty, at least, was something she could work with. I have conditions, Rosa said. I expected nothing less. My sister must be allowed to visit. My father's medical expenses will be covered immediately, not after the year ends. And I will have complete freedom within the manor. No locked doors, no forbidden rooms. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. One room, the West Wing. I require privacy there for my work. Everything else is yours. Rosa studied him. He had not negotiated, had not tried to reduce the medical expenses or limit Evie's visits. He had simply agreed as if money meant nothing to him, which it probably did. He was a duke. There is one more thing, he said quietly. One condition on my side that you must accept before agreeing. Yes, his eyes held hers. In the gray afternoon light, they looked almost colorless. I am not like other men, Miss Thornhill. If you marry me, you will discover things that seem impossible. You will have questions I cannot answer. You may come to fear me. He took one step closer. But I give you my word that I will never harm you. And at the end of 1 year, you will be free. Can you accept this? The rain fell harder now. Rosa's dress was ruined. Her shoes were filling with water. In 6 weeks, creditors would take her home. Yes, she said, I accept. Something changed in his expression then. Not quite relief, more like resignation. Then we have an agreement. He reached into his coat and produced a small velvet box. Your engagement ring. The wedding will be in 3 weeks. My solicitor will call on your father tomorrow with the contracts. He turned to leave. Duke Blackwood. He stopped. What should I call you? Rosa asked. When we are alone. He was silent for a long moment. Sebastian, he said finally. You may call me Sebastian. Then he walked away through the rain, his gray coat disappearing into the mist, like a ghost that had never been there at all. Rosa opened the velvet box. Inside was a ring of white gold set with a single dark ruby, the color of blood. She slipped it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. The wedding took place on the 1st of March in a small church filled with people Rosa did not know. Sebastian had no family, he explained. Only business associates and society acquaintances who came because refusing a duke's invitation was unthinkable. Rosa wore white silk that Sebastian's money had purchased. Evie had wept when she saw it, not from happiness, but from the sheer relief that her sister would not have to marry in a borrowed dress. Their father had smiled vaguely and told Rosa she looked just like her mother. He had said the same thing at breakfast. The ceremony was beautiful and hollow. Rosa spoke her vows clearly. Sebastian's voice never wavered. When the vicar pronounced them, husband and wife, Sebastian lifted her veil with hands that were cold even through his gloves. He kissed her forehead, not her lips, a kiss like a signature on a contract. The guests applauded politely. At the reception, Rosa smiled until her face ached. She danced once with Sebastian, his hand on her waist formal and careful, maintaining exactly the proper distance. She spoke to Lady Margaret Sinclair, an elegant woman in her 40s, who studied Rosa with intelligent eyes and said, You are braver than you look, my dear. Rosa did not know what to say to that. As evening fell, Sebastian appeared at her side. The carriage is ready. Rosa hugged Evie tightly. Her sister smelled of lavender and tears. Write to me, Evie whispered. Every week. Promise. I promise. And Rosa, Evie pulled back, her young face suddenly serious. If he hurts you, if anything is wrong, you come home. The money does not matter that much. But it did. They both knew it did. Rosa kissed her father's cheek. He patted her hand and told her to have a lovely time at the seaside. They were not going to the seaside. Rosa did not correct him. Then she climbed into the carriage beside her husband, and they rolled away from everything she had ever known. They did not speak during the journey. Sebastian sat across from her, not beside her, staring out at the darkening countryside. Rosa watched him when she thought he was not looking. His profile was sharp in the fading light, perfect like something painted rather than born. After 2 hours, the carriage turned onto a private road. Rosa saw iron gates, then trees ancient and gnarled. The road curved and climbed. Then Ravensmoor Manor appeared. It was not what she expected. She had imagined something like the Gothic novels Evie loved. Crumbling stone and ravens circling towers. Instead, Ravensmoor was graceful. 3 stories of pale limestone with tall windows that glowed golden in the twilight. Ivy climbed the walls, but it looked tended, deliberate, beautiful. The carriage stopped. Sebastian stepped out and offered his hand. Rosa took it. His fingers were cold through her glove. The front door opened and a woman emerged. Late 50s, gray hair and a perfect knot, dark dress, immaculate. She curtsied. Welcome to Ravensmoor, Your Grace. It took Rosa a moment to realize the woman was speaking to her. Your Grace. She was a duchess now. Thank you, Rosa managed. This is Mrs. Pemberton, Sebastian said. She manages the household. Anything you need, she will provide. Mrs. Pemberton's eyes were kind. I have prepared your rooms, my lady. I thought you might wish to rest after the journey. That would be lovely. Sebastian turned to Rosa. I have business to attend to. Mrs. Pemberton will show you the manor. We breakfast at 8. He walked away before she could respond, disappearing into the house like smoke. Mrs. Pemberton smiled gently. His Grace keeps unusual hours, my lady. You will grow accustomed to it. She led Rosa inside. The entrance hall was breathtaking. A curved staircase rose to the upper floors. Paintings lined the walls, portraits of people Rosa did not recognize. Candles burned in silver sconces, casting warm light over everything. The drawing room is here, the library through that door, the dining room is to the right. His Grace's study is in the east wing. He prefers privacy there. They climbed the stairs. The second floor was quieter, carpeted in deep blue. These are your rooms. Mrs. Pemberton opened a door. The bedroom was larger than Rosa's entire house in London. A four-poster bed dominated the space, hung with curtains of cream silk. A fireplace crackled cheerfully. French doors opened onto a small balcony overlooking gardens Rosa could barely see in the darkness. Your dressing room is through here. I have taken the liberty of unpacking your things. Mrs. Pemberton hesitated. His Grace's rooms are in the west wing. He keeps separate quarters. I hope that does not distress you. Not at all, Rosa said truthfully. Dinner will be brought to your room tonight if that is acceptable. His Grace thought you might prefer to rest. That is very kind. After Mrs. Pemberton left, Rosa walked to the balcony doors and opened them. Cold air rushed in carrying the scent of earth and something else. Something sweet and slightly decaying, like flowers past their bloom. She could hear nothing, no London sounds, no carriages or voices or church bells, only silence vast and complete. Rosa closed the doors and sat on the bed. She was married. She was a duchess. She was in a manor in the middle of nowhere, married to a man she did not know who had already disappeared on their wedding night. But Evie would go to Paris. Her father would have nurses. The creditors would be paid. It was enough. It had to be enough. The first week passed in a strange dream. Rosa woke each morning in the vast bed and found breakfast waiting on a tray. Tea, toast, fruit, everything perfectly arranged. She ate alone. Sebastian was never there. She explored the manor. The library was magnificent, floor-to-ceiling books in several languages. The drawing room had a piano she did not know how to play. The gardens were winter bare but clearly extensive, with stone paths and frozen fountains. She did not go to the west wing. The door was always closed. In the evenings, Mrs. Pemberton brought dinner to her room. Rosa asked once if she might dine with His Grace. His Grace takes his meals privately, my lady. He works late into the night. On the 8th day, Rosa woke and found a note on her breakfast tray. There is a gathering tonight at Lord Hertford's. We must attend. The carriage will be ready at 7. Wear the blue gown, S. Rosa had not seen him in a week. Not at meals, not in the corridors, not anywhere. And now they would attend a party as if they were a normal married couple. She wore the blue gown. It was beautiful dark sapphire silk that Mrs. Pemberton had helped her into. Her wedding ring gleamed on her finger. At 7 precisely, she descended the stairs. Sebastian waited in the entrance hall. Rosa nearly stopped breathing. He wore black evening clothes that fit him perfectly. His dark hair was brushed back. In the candlelight, his skin looked almost translucent, and his eyes were the strange pale gray she remembered from the garden. He looked at her for a long moment. You look well, he said finally. Thank you. He offered his arm. Rosa took it. His sleeve was cold under her fingers. They did not speak in the carriage. Rosa watched the countryside roll past in darkness. Sebastian stared at nothing, his face unreadable. Will there be many people? Rosa asked finally. Yes. And should I know anything about them? Only that they will judge you, and through you me. He turned to look at her. You need only be polite. Smile when appropriate. Do not answer questions about our marriage beyond the obvious pleasantries. And what are the obvious pleasantries? That we met through mutual acquaintances, that it was a brief courtship, that we are very happy. Happy? Rosa almost laughed. I can manage that, she said. Lord Hertford's house blazed with light and noise. Music spilled from open windows. Carriages lined the drive, footmen rushing to attend each arrival. Rosa felt Sebastian tense beside her as they entered. The ballroom was full of silk and jewels and laughter. Conversations stopped as they were announced. Every eye turned toward them. The Duke and Duchess of Ravensmore. Rosa felt the weight of those stares. Curious, calculating, assessing her worth, her background, her right to stand beside a duke. Sebastian's hand tightened slightly on her arm. A small gesture, almost protective. They moved through the crowd, introductions blurred together. Lord, this, lady, that. Everyone smiled. Everyone had questions hidden behind their smiles. Lady Margaret Sinclair appeared elegant in wine-colored silk. Your Grace, she said warmly to Rosa, how lovely to see you again. You must tell me how you are settling into Ravensmoor. Such a beautiful estate. It is indeed, Rosa said, though I confess I am still learning my way around. Of course, marriage is always an adjustment. Margaret's eyes flicked to Sebastian, particularly to a husband with such demanding work. Something passed between them. Some understanding Rosa did not share. If you will excuse me, Sebastian said quietly, I see Lord Hertford. I must speak with him. He left Rosa with Margaret. The older woman smiled. Do not look so stricken, my dear. He will return. Sebastian is not comfortable in crowds. Never has been. You know him well. Well enough. Margaret studied Rosa. He is a good man, though a complicated one. I hope you will be patient with him. Our arrangement does not require patience, Rosa said carefully. Only civility. Margaret's expression shifted. Arrangement. What an interesting word. Before Rosa could respond, a man appeared at her elbow. Late 50s, well-dressed with eyes that smiled but did not warm. Duchess Ravensmoor, what a pleasure. Lord Edmund Hartley. Rosa curtsied slightly. Lord Hartley. I knew your husband's late wife, Lady Isabel. A remarkable woman. So tragic her death. Rosa's heart stuttered. Late wife. Sebastian had been married before. I did not know, she said softly. Hartley's smile widened. Did you not? How curious. Well, it was 5 years ago now, though some wounds never truly heal, do they? He drifted away into the crowd. Margaret touched Rosa's arm gently. Do not let Hartley disturb you. He thrives on discomfort. But Rosa barely heard her. Sebastian had been married, his wife had died, and he had never mentioned it. When Sebastian returned to collect her, an hour later, Rosa said nothing. She smiled and made small talk in the carriage. She thanked him for a pleasant evening when they arrived home. But that night, Rosa could not sleep. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and left her room. The manor was dark except for candles burning in wall sconces. Her bare feet made no sound on the carpet. She found the library and lit a lamp. If Sebastian had been married before, there would be evidence. Letters, perhaps. Records. She searched for an hour, finding nothing. Then she noticed a small door half hidden behind a bookshelf. It was unlocked. Inside was a smaller room. A reading room, perhaps. Intimate. A sofa by the window. A small desk. And on the desk, a leather journal. Rosa knew she should not. This was not her business. Sebastian's past was not part of their arrangement, but her hands opened the journal anyway. The handwriting was feminine, looping, and graceful. February 14th, 1878. Today, Sebastian told me the truth. He is vampire. I confess I thought him mad at first, but then he showed me. The reflection that does not appear in mirrors. The way he does not eat. The coldness of his skin. All of it true. All of it impossible. And yet I love him. Is that madness, to love something that should not exist? Perhaps. But I cannot stop. Rosa's hands shook. The pages blurred. She turned further into the journal. March 1880. We have been married 2 years. 2 years of hiding, of pretending, of watching Sebastian withdraw further into himself. He says he loves me. I believe him. But I am aging, and he is not. I am 25, and already I see lines forming around my eyes. He is exactly as he was the day we met. In 20 years, I will be an old woman, and he will still be young. Still, how can I bear it? How can I watch myself decay while he remains beautiful? Rosa turned the page with trembling fingers. June 1880, I have decided. I cannot do this. The thought of growing old while Sebastian stays forever young is a torture I cannot endure. Better to end it now while I am still myself, while he can remember me as I am not as I will become. He will grieve, but he has eternity to grieve. I have only this one life, and I choose to end it on my terms. If anyone reads this, know that I loved him. I loved him more than life. That is why I must go. The journal ended there. Rosa closed it carefully and sat in the darkness for a long time. Vampire? Impossible, but it explained everything. The coldness, the avoidance of daylight, the separate rooms, the strange warning in the garden. I am not like other men. Rosa should have been terrified. Instead, she felt a strange, aching sadness. He had loved someone who could not bear what he was. And now he had married someone who did not love him at all. Someone practical. Someone who would not care about his nature because she was only here for the money. It was brilliant in its way, and desperately lonely. Rosa returned the journal to the desk and left the room exactly as she had found it, but she did not return to her bedroom. She went to the west wing. The door was closed as always. Rosa knocked. Silence. She knocked again. Enter. His voice was cold. distant. Rosa opened the door. The room was a study lined with books and papers. Candles burned on every surface. And Sebastian sat at a desk, a glass in his hand filled with something dark red. He did not move when he saw her. "You were told not to come here." "I know." Rosa stepped inside and closed the door. "I found Isabel's journal." His hand tightened on the glass. "That was not meant for you." "I know that too." Silence stretched between them. "Are you afraid?" he asked finally. Rosa considered. "No, you should be." "Perhaps." She moved closer. "You told me you were not like other men. You told me I would discover impossible things." "I have, and I am not afraid." Sebastian set down the glass and stood. He was taller than her by nearly a head. In the candlelight, his face looked carved from ice. "I am a vampire, Rosa. I drink blood. I do not age. I have lived for over a century and a half. I watched Isabel die because she could not accept what I am." His voice was perfectly level, perfectly controlled. "Why are you not afraid?" "Because you have never hurt me. Because you gave me money for my father before you had to. Because you look at me like you are waiting for me to run." Rosa met his strange eyes. "And because I think you are very, very lonely." Something cracked in his expression. Just for a moment. Then it was gone. "The arrangement stands," he said quietly. 1 year. Then you are free." "I know. You will not tell anyone what I am." "I will not." He turned away from her, facing the window. "You should return to your room. Will you answer one question?" "Perhaps. Why did you marry me if you loved Isabel? If she died because of what you are, why risk this again?" His shoulders tensed. "Because I am tired," he said finally. "Tired of hiding, tired of being alone. I thought perhaps a marriage of convenience would be easier. No love to complicate it. No heartbreak when it ends." He looked back at her. "I was wrong." "Wrong how, because you are kind, Rosa. And kindness is harder to bear than hatred." He walked past her to the door and opened it. A dismissal. Rosa left without another word. But as she walked back to her room, she noticed something on her pillow that had not been there before. A small bundle of dried lavender tied with a ribbon. She held it to her face and breathed in the scent. In the morning, she found another note on her breakfast tray. "Thank you for not running, S." The second month at Ravensmore passed differently than the first. Sebastian did not hide anymore. He joined Rosa for breakfast, though he only drank tea. They walked in the gardens in the evenings after the sun had set. He showed her his library, told her to read anything she wished. They did not speak of vampires again. They did not need to. Instead, they spoke of small things. Books, music, the way spring was beginning to touch the frozen gardens. Rosa learned that Sebastian had been turned vampire at 34 in 1724 by a woman he had refused to marry. A witch's curse, he said, punishment for breaking her heart. She learned that he had spent decades alone, moving from place to place to avoid suspicion. She learned that Isabel had been his attempt at normalcy, at human connection, and it had destroyed them both. "I will not make that mistake again," he said one evening as they stood on the terrace. "When our year ends, you will leave. You will live your life. You will grow old and die as you should, and I will continue alone." "That sounds unbearable," Rosa said quietly. "It is what I deserve." "For what? For being cursed. For being what I am." Rosa wanted to argue, but she had learned that Sebastian's guilt was not something logic could touch. Instead, she changed the subject. "My sister writes that she has been accepted to the Art Academy in Paris. She starts in the autumn." Something softened in Sebastian's expression. "I am glad. She wants to visit before she goes, to see Ravensmore, to meet you properly. Of course, she is welcome whenever she wishes. She may ask difficult questions." "I am accustomed to difficult questions." Rosa smiled. "Not from Evie, you are not." Evie arrived 3 weeks later in late March when the gardens were beginning to bloom. She burst from the carriage like a small storm, all energy and joy, throwing her arms around Rosa. "You look wonderful. The country air agrees with you. And this place, Rosa, it is like something from a novel." Rosa laughed. "Come inside, I will show you everything." But Evie's eyes had already found Sebastian standing in the doorway. She stared. Rosa could not blame her. In the afternoon light, Sebastian looked even more otherworldly than usual. "Your Grace," Evie said, curtsying. "Thank you for inviting me." "Miss Thornhill, you are always welcome here." That evening after dinner, Evie cornered Rosa in her room. "He is very handsome," she said without preamble, "and very strange. Rosa, there is something not quite right about him." Rosa's heart beat faster. What do you mean? I mean he does not eat. I mean his skin is cold. I mean he looks at you like you are the only warm thing in a frozen world. Evie grabbed Rosa's hands. Tell me the truth. What is he? Rosa hesitated. She had promised not to tell. But this was Evie, her sister, the one person who had never lied to her. If I tell you, you must promise never to speak of it outside this room. Evie's eyes widened. I promise. He is a vampire. Silence. Then to Rosa's shock, Evie smiled. I knew it. You knew it. Well, I suspected. Rosa, it is so romantic, like a Gothic novel come to life. Evie, this is not a novel. This is real. I know, but do you not see he is cursed, lonely immortal, and you are the one who has shown him kindness. Evie squeezed Rosa's hands. You are falling in love with him. I am not. You are, I can see it, and I think he is falling in love with you too. This is an arrangement, Evie. In 9 months, I will leave. We agreed. Agreements can change. Not this one. But even as Rosa said it, she felt the lie in her chest. Because Evie was right. She was falling in love with Sebastian, and it terrified her. The next day, Evie left for London, making Rosa promise to write every week. Sebastian stood on the steps and watched the carriage disappear. She is remarkable, he said quietly. You are fortunate in your sister. I am. They stood in silence. She knows, Sebastian said, about me. Yes. And she's not afraid, sir. She thinks it is romantic. Sebastian's mouth curved slightly, almost a smile. The young always do. That night, Rosa found something on her pillow again. Not lavender this time. A cloak. Deep red velvet lined with silk. Heavy and beautiful. She lifted it carefully and found a note pinned inside. This belonged to my mother. I would like you to have it. S. Rosa pressed her face into the velvet. It smelled of cedar and thyme. Mrs. Pemberton appeared in the doorway. His Grace has never given that to anyone, she said softly. Not even Lady Isabel. He has kept it locked away for 130 years. Rosa looked up. Why give it to me? Mrs. Pemberton smiled sadly. Because he is falling in love with you, my lady, and he knows it will destroy him. The next morning, Rosa wore the cloak to breakfast. Sebastian saw it and went completely still. It suits you, he said finally. Thank you, it is beautiful. They ate in silence, but Rosa felt the weight of unsaid things pressing down on the room like a physical presence. After breakfast, as Sebastian rose to leave, Rosa spoke. Lord Hartley approached me at Lord Hertford's ball. He mentioned Isabel. Sebastian froze. What did he say? Only that he knew her, that her death was tragic. Rosa paused. He seemed to know more than he was saying. Sebastian's jaw tightened. Edmund Hartley is a dangerous man. If he approaches you again, tell me immediately. Is he a threat? To me, yes. To you, not directly, but he would use you if he could. Use me how? Sebastian looked at her for a long moment. Then he crossed the room and closed the door. Hartley knows what I am, he said quietly. He has known for years. He uses that knowledge to control me. Votes in Parliament, business decisions, influence. If I refuse, he threatens exposure. Rosa felt cold. For how long? 10 years. And you have simply endured this. What choice do I have? If the world knows what I am, I will be hunted, destroyed. Everything I have built will crumble. So you married me to appear more respectable, to make his threats less credible. Yes, Sebastian's voice was flat. A married duke is harder to destroy than a reclusive bachelor with strange habits. Rosa absorbed this. What does he want now? I do not know yet, but he will make his demands known soon enough. He always does. He turned to leave. Sebastian, he stopped. I will not let him use me against you. Sebastian looked back at her. His expression was unreadable. You may not have a choice, he said. Then he left. Rosa stood alone in the dining room wearing a cloak that had belonged to a vampire's mother, married to a man she was not supposed to love, caught in a web she did not fully understand. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. The arrangement had changed. She could not say when it happened. Perhaps the moment she found Isabel's journal. Perhaps when Sebastian gave her the cloak. Perhaps it had been changing all along so slowly neither of them noticed it. But it had changed, and Rosa had no idea how to stop it, or if she even wanted to. That night, as she prepared for bed, Mrs. Pemberton brought a letter. This arrived for you, my lady, from London. Rosa recognized Evie's handwriting immediately. She opened it expecting news of the academy, perhaps gossip from home. Instead, she found 3 words. Be careful, Rosa, and beneath it a newspaper clipping. The headline read, Lord Edmund Hartley calls for investigation into Ravensmoor estate holdings. Rosa's hands shook as she read the article. Hartley was making veiled accusations of financial irregularities of Sebastian's reclusive nature, suggesting something hidden. It was the beginning of an attack. Rosa folded the letter carefully and walked to the window. Outside, the gardens were dark. Somewhere in the manor, Sebastian was alone in his study, drinking whatever sustained him, believing himself unworthy of the very thing he wanted most. And Rosa, practical Rosa, who had agreed to 1 year and nothing more, felt her heart make a choice her mind had not sanctioned. She would not let Hartley destroy him, whatever it took. The moon rose over Ravensmoor, full and cold and beautiful. And Rosa Thornhill, Duchess of Ravensmoor, stood at the window wearing a red velvet cloak and understood that some arrangements once broken could never be repaired, only transformed into something else entirely, something dangerous, something that felt remarkably like hope. April came to Ravensmoor with cherry blossoms and rain. Rosa woke each morning to find small things changed. A book she had mentioned appeared on her bedside table. The pianoforte in the drawing room, long neglected, was suddenly tuned. And always there was lavender. On her breakfast tray, tied to the handle of the garden door, slipped between the pages of whatever novel she was reading. Sebastian never mentioned these gifts. He appeared at breakfast, drank his tea, asked polite questions about her plans for the day. But his eyes, those pale gray eyes, watched her with an intensity that made her breath catch. They had fallen into a rhythm, the two of them, a dance with rules neither had spoken aloud. Mornings, Rosa walked the gardens alone while Sebastian slept. The rose bushes were beginning to bud. The fountain in the east garden had been turned on water, splashing over stone angels, whose faces had been worn smooth by centuries. Afternoons she read in the library. Sometimes Sebastian joined her, settling into the chair across from hers, with a book he had already read a dozen times. They did not speak, but the silence between them felt full warm like sunlight filtering through old glass. Evenings after the sun set, they walked, the same path every night, through the formal gardens, past the hedge maze, to the small gazebo at the property's edge where you could see the lights of distant villages glowing like fallen stars. It was on one of these walks in late April that Rosa finally asked the question she had been holding for weeks. What do you miss most from before? Sebastian did not pretend to misunderstand. Warmth, the sun on my face, the taste of food. He paused. Growing tired. I have not slept in over a century. I simply wait for dawn, and then the darkness takes me. It is not the same. It sounds lonely. It is. They walked in silence. The moon was half full, casting silver shadows across the path. What do you miss? Sebastian asked. From London, Rosa considered. Noise, chaos, the feeling that I was part of something larger. She smiled slightly. Though I do not miss the creditors, or the constant worry. And your sister, every day. Rosa's chest tightened. She writes that Paris is wonderful, that the academy is everything she dreamed, but I can tell she is lonely too. You saved her, Sebastian said quietly, by coming here, by marrying me. We saved each other. That was the arrangement. Yes. His voice was strange. The arrangement. He offered his arm. Rosa took it. Beneath her fingers, his sleeve was cold, but she no longer flinched at the touch. They reached the gazebo and stood looking out at the darkness. Lord Hartley has been quiet, Rosa said, since the newspaper article. Do you think he has given up? No. Sebastian's jaw tightened. Edmund never gives up. He is simply waiting. For what? The right moment to strike. Rosa turned to face him. In the moonlight, Sebastian looked like something carved from ice and shadow, beautiful and utterly alone. Tell me what he wants, she said, not in generalities, specifically. What does Hartley hold over you? Sebastian was silent for so long, Rosa thought he would not answer. Then he spoke. There is a bill coming before Parliament, a vote on land rights that will determine the future of estates like Ravensmoor. Hartley wants me to vote in a way that will benefit his business interests, but harm dozens of tenant families who depend on these lands. He looked at her. If I refuse, he will expose what I am, and everything I have protected for over a century will be destroyed. So you will vote as he wishes. I have no choice. There is always a choice, not when the alternative is annihilation. Rosa stepped closer. You are the Duke of Ravensmoor. You have influence, connections, resources. Surely there is something you can do. Against a man who knows I am a monster who could prove it if he wished. Sebastian shook his head. No, Rosa. The only power I have is to endure, as I have always endured. That is not power, Rosa said fiercely. That is surrender. Something flashed in Sebastian's eyes. Anger, perhaps, or pain. What would you have me do? Fight him, risk exposure, risk everything. I would have you live, Sebastian, truly live, not just endure. He stared at her, the moment stretched between them taut as a bowstring. Then Sebastian stepped back. We should return to the manor. It is late. He walked away without waiting for her response. Rosa stood alone in the gazebo, her heart beating too fast, and wondered when she had stopped thinking of this as an arrangement and started thinking of it as something else entirely. May brought warmth in the first real heat of summer approaching. The gardens exploded into color. Roses climbed the manor walls. Lavender bloomed in great purple clouds that smelled like memory and morning. Rosa spent hours among the flowers, sketching them in a journal Sebastian had given her. She was not an artist like Evie, but there was something soothing about capturing the curl of a petal, the way light fell through leaves. Sebastian found her there one afternoon, sitting beneath the old oak tree, her skirts spread around her like petals. You draw, he said. Rosa looked up, startled. He stood in the shade of the tree, dressed in his usual dark clothes. The sun was still high enough that he kept to the shadows. Badly, she admitted, but Evie always said the trying was what mattered. May I see? She handed him the journal. He studied her sketches in silence. His expression gave away nothing. These are lovely, he said finally. You are being kind. I am being honest. He sat beside her, careful to remain in shadow. You see beauty in small things. That is a rare gift. Rosa felt heat rise to her cheeks. I had nothing but small things for so long, I learned to appreciate them. Sebastian handed back the journal. His fingers brushed hers. For a moment, neither of them moved. Rosa, his voice was low, I must tell you something. About the curse. Her heart stuttered. Yes. He looked out at the gardens, at the riot of color and life. When I told you I was cursed to be vampire, I did not explain the full terms. He paused. The witch who cursed me said that only true love's acceptance could break it. If someone truly loved me, knowing what I am, and chose to stay, the curse would end. And you would become human again. Yes, but there is more. He turned to face her. If the curse breaks, I do not simply become human, as I was at 34. I begin aging from that point, normally, which means I would have perhaps 40, maybe 50 years left. Then I would die, like any man. Rosa went very still. Isabel knew this. Yes, and she could not bear it, the thought of losing you. She said she would rather die while I was still perfect in her memory than watch me grow old and leave her. His voice was flat empty. So she took laudanum and drifted away in her sleep, and the curse remained. Rosa's throat closed. Sebastian, I tell you this because I see how you look at me now, how we have become comfortable with each other, and I need you to understand. He took her hand. His fingers were cold but gentle. Even if you came to care for me, even if you stayed beyond the year, it would doom me. I would become mortal, and you would have to watch me age and sicken and die. Most people age and die, Rosa said softly. That is what it means to be human. But I have been not human for so long. The thought of mortality terrifies me more than anything. Rosa looked down at their joined hands, hers warm and alive, his cold and unchanging. What do you want, Sebastian? If you could choose, what would you choose? He was silent for a long time. I do not know, he said finally. I have spent so long simply surviving that I have forgotten what it means to want. Rosa squeezed his hand. Then perhaps it is time to remember. That night, Rosa could not sleep. She stood on her balcony watching the moon travel across the sky and thought about choices. Sebastian could live forever alone and cold and unchanging. Or he could live a human lifetime aging and warm and surrounded by the possibility of love, which was the greater curse she did not know. But she knew what Isabel had chosen. Death rather than life with loss. And Rosa knew with a certainty that settled in her bones that she would choose differently. June arrived with thunderstorms that shook the manor and turned the gardens to mud. Rosa received a letter from London. Her father's condition had worsened. The nurses said it would not be long now. She found Sebastian in his study surrounded by papers and ledgers. I must go to London, she said without preamble. My father is dying. Sebastian stood immediately. Of course, I will arrange the carriage. You do not need to, Rosa. He crossed to her. You need to be with your family. The carriage will be ready within the hour. She left for London that afternoon. Sebastian stood on the steps and watched her go, his face unreadable. The journey took 6 hours. Rosa stared out the window and tried to prepare herself for what was coming. But when she arrived at the small house Sebastian's money had purchased for her family, when she climbed the stairs and saw her father in bed so small and gray, she realized there was no preparation for this. Evie was there, having rushed back from Paris. She hugged Rosa tightly. "He has been asking for you," Evie whispered. "He knows you are married, but he keeps forgetting where you have gone." Rosa sat beside this bed and took her father's hand, his eyes open. For a moment they were clear. "Rosa, my girl." "I am here, Papa." "You marry well." "Oh, yes. He is good to you." Rosa thought of lavender and red cloaks and cold hands that held hers so gently. "Very good." Her father smiled. "I am glad. Your mother would be glad too." His eyes drifted closed. "So tired." "Then rest, Papa. Will you stay, Mehe, as long as you need me?" He squeezed her hand weakly. Then he slept. Rosa stayed for a week. She sat beside her father's bed and read to him when he was awake. She helped Evie manage the nurses. She wrote to Sebastian every evening, short notes that said little but meant everything. "He is peaceful. The pain is not terrible. I will return when I can." Our Sebastian's replies came by return messenger. "Take all the time you need. I am here. S." On the 8th day, her father woke in the early morning and asked to speak with Rosa alone. Evie left, closing the door softly. Rosa sat and waited. "I have something for you," her father said. His voice was barely a whisper. "In the drawer, the small box." Rosa found it, a wooden box worn smooth with age. "Open it." Inside was a letter sealed with wax, and beneath it a locket. "Your mother's," her father said. "I meant to give it to you when you married, but I forgot. I forget so much now." "It is all right, Papa." "The letter." He coughed weakly. "Read it after I am gone. It is important." "Papa, do not listen." His eyes were fierce now, burning with something that looked like urgency. "I know why you married the Duke. I know it was for money for us, and I want you to know." He reached for her hand. "I want you to know that I release you from that obligation. If you have found happiness with him, choose that. Choose love, Rosa. Do not make my mistake." "What mistake?" "I married your mother because my family approved. I was fond of her, but I did not love her. Not the way I should have. Not the way she deserved." His breath rattled. "There was someone else. Before your mother. A girl from the village. My family said she was unsuitable. And I listened. I let her go. I have regretted it every day since." Tears blurred Rosa's vision. "Papa, choose love," he whispered. "Even if it is complicated. Even if it is hard. Choose love. Life is too short for anything else." He closed his eyes. He did not open them again. Her father died peacefully that afternoon with Rosa and Evie holding his hands. The funeral was small. A few old friends, the nurses who had cared for him, Lady Margaret Sinclair, who had traveled from London and sat beside Rosa throughout the service. Sebastian did not come. He could not, Rosa knew. Daylight in churches were not for vampires. But when she returned to the house after the burial, she found a letter waiting. "I am sorry for your loss. Your father was fortunate to have you. When you are ready to return, I will be waiting. There is no hurry. S." And beneath his signature, a pressed sprig of lavender. Rosa held it to her face and wept. She stayed in London for another week to helping Evie sort through their father's things. The house would be sold, Evie would return to Paris, and Rosa would go back to Ravensmoor. Back to Sebastian. Back to an arrangement that no longer felt like an arrangement at all. On her last night in London, Rosa remembered the letter. She opened it by candlelight alone in what had been her childhood bedroom. The handwriting was her father's, though shakier than she remembered. "My dearest Rosa, if you are reading this, I am gone. I hope my passing was peaceful and that you were there. You have always been my strength. There is something I must tell you, something I have carried for too long. When I was young, before I met your mother, I loved a girl named Anne. She was a merchant's daughter, unsuitable by my family's standards. They forbade the match, and I cowered that I was obeyed. I married your mother because it was expected. She was a good woman and I cared for her, but I did not love her the way Anne deserved to be loved. And I have spent my life wondering what might have been if I had been braver. I see that same crossroads before you now. You married the Duke for practical reasons. I understand. I bless that marriage because it saved our family. But Rosa, if there is any chance, any possibility that you might love him, or that he might love you, do not let practicality steal that from you. I learned too late that security without love is just a comfortable prison. that duty without joy is a slow death, that the safe choice is often the one we regret most. If your Duke is kind to you, if he makes you happy, if there is even a spark of something real between you, then fight for it. Do not let fear or propriety or the memory of an old arrangement stop you. Choose love, my darling girl, even if it is complicated, even if it is impossible, even if it terrifies you. Because a life lived in love, even a short one, that is worth more than a century of loneliness. Your loving father, Rosa, read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her pocket over her heart. In the morning, she said goodbye to Evie. You are going back to him, Evie said. It was not a question. Yes. Because of the arrangement, Rosa shook her head. Because I choose to. Evie hugged her tightly. He is very lucky. I hope he knows that. I am the lucky one. No, Evie said fiercely. You are both lucky. That is what makes it magic. The journey back to Ravensmoor felt both endless and too short. Rosa watched the countryside roll past and thought about everything that had changed. 3 months ago, she had been a desperate girl accepting a devil's bargain. Now she was a woman returning to a man she loved. A man who was cursed. A man who believed he did not deserve love. A man who would die if she gave it to him. The paradox should have broken her. Instead, it made her certain, because her father was right. A life lived in love, even a short one, was worth more than eternity alone. It was late afternoon when the carriage rolled through Ravensmoor's gates. The summer sun was still high. Sebastian would be sleeping, waiting for darkness. Mrs. Pemberton met her at the door. Welcome home, my lady. I am so sorry for your loss. Thank you. Rosa looked around the entrance hall. Everything exactly as she had left it. Is His Grace in his chambers? He retired early today. Mrs. Pemberton's eyes were kind. He has been subdued since you left. Rosa climbed the stairs to her room. Someone had put fresh flowers on her table. Lavender, of course. She changed from her traveling dress into something simpler. Then she sat at her writing desk and stared at blank paper. How did you tell someone you loved them when that love would kill them? She did not write a letter. Instead, she waited for sunset. When the sky turned gold and purple, when the first stars appeared, Rosa left her room and walked to the west wing. She knocked on Sebastian's door. Enter. He was standing by the window watching the last light fade. He turned when she came in and his face transformed. Rosa, I did not expect you until tomorrow. I could not wait. He crossed to her, stopping just out of reach. How are you? Sad, relieved, grateful I was there at the end. She paused. He left me a letter. Would you like to tell me about it? He told me not to make his mistake. What mistake? Rosa looked up at him. At this beautiful, impossible man who had given her lavender and honesty and kindness she did not know she needed. He chose duty over love, and he regretted it his entire life. Sebastian went very still. Rosa, I know what you are going to say, that our arrangement ends in 4 months, that I should leave and live my life, that loving you would be a death sentence for you. All of that is true. I know. She stepped closer. But I also know that I have spent the last week watching my father die, watching him slip away with regrets he could not undo. And I realized something. What? That I would rather have 30 years with you as a mortal man than watch you exist forever as something lonely and frozen and half alive. The silence in the room was absolute. You do not know what you are saying, Sebastian said finally. His voice was rough. I do. If you stay, if you truly love me, the curse will break. I will become human. I will age, I will die. You will lose me. And if I leave, you will live forever, alone, cold, drinking blood in the dark and pretending it is enough. She took his hand. That is not living, Sebastian. That is haunting your own life. Rosa, her name was a plea. I love you, she said simply. I did not mean to. I tried not to, but I love you. And I choose you, however long we have, whatever it costs. You do not understand what you are giving up. I understand perfectly. I am giving up the illusion of your immortality for the reality of your humanity. I am choosing a future where we grow old together over one where you stay frozen and I leave. She stepped closer. I am choosing life, Sebastian. Real life. With all its mess and heartbreak and beauty. His control broke. Sebastian pulled her into his arms and held her as if she were the only solid thing in a dissolving world. His body was cold against hers, but his grip was warm with desperation. I've been alone for so long, he whispered against her hair. I do not know how to be anything else. Then learn. We will learn together. He pulled back enough to look at her. His eyes were bright, almost feverish. If we do this, if I let myself love you, if the curse breaks and I become mortal, I will only have decades left. Not centuries. Decades. Most people only get decades, and they fill them with joy. I could die before you. You could lose me. I will lose you anyway if you stay like this. At least if you are human, we will have had something real. Sebastian cupped her face in his cold hands. You are the bravest person I have ever known. I am scared, Rosa said, but I would rather be scared with you than safe without you. So would I. He kissed her then, not the formal kiss from their wedding, not a gesture or a performance. A real kiss, gentle at first, then deeper. His lips were cold, but they warmed against hers. And Rosa felt something shift in the air around them, something ancient and powerful releasing its hold. Sebastian gasped and pulled away. What? He staggered. Rosa caught him, barely keeping them both upright. Sebastian, I feel... He pressed a hand to his chest. My heart. Rosa, my heart is beating. She placed her hand over his. Beneath her palm she felt it. A heartbeat. Slow at first, then stronger. Steady. Sebastian's skin began to warm. The deathly pallor faded. Color bloomed in his cheeks. He looked at his hands. In the candlelight, they no longer appeared translucent. The curse, he whispered. It is breaking. Rosa held him as the transformation continued. It was not dramatic, no light or thunder, just a gradual warming, a slow return to life. When it was over, Sebastian looked at her with eyes that were no longer pale gray, but warm hazel. I can feel everything, he said wonderingly. The temperature, the texture of your dress, my own heartbeat. He laughed and the sound was full of shocked joy. I am alive, truly alive. Yes, because you love me. Yes. He pulled her close again, and this time when he held her, his body was warm. I love you, he said. I think I have loved you since you stood in the rain and demanded conditions for our arrangement. But I was too afraid to admit it. We were both afraid. And now, Rosa smiled, now we have decades to be brave together. They stood in the dimming light, holding each other, two people who had been lonely too long, finally finding home. Outside summer, twilight faded to dark, and in the manor, something that had been frozen for over a century began at last to thaw. Mrs. Pemberton found them the next morning in the garden, walking hand in hand in the full sunlight. She stopped dead. His Grace. In daylight. Impossible. But there he was. Sebastian, Duke of Ravensmore, standing in the morning sun, without burning, without fading. Human, alive. He smiled at her, and Mrs. Pemberton noticed the fine lines at the corners of his eyes that had not been there before. He was aging. Already. Mrs. Pemberton, he said warmly, would you prepare breakfast for two? I find I am ravenously hungry. Of course, Your Grace. She hurried inside, her heart full. After a century of watching him suffer, she would finally see him live. That afternoon, a messenger arrived from London. Lord Edmund Hartley requested an audience with the Duke. Sebastian read the letter and handed it to Rosa. He knows, Sebastian said. Somehow he knows the curse has broken. Herr Edmund has always known more than he should. Perhaps he had spies watching the manor. Perhaps he simply sensed the change. Sebastian's jaw tightened. Either way, he will use this. He has lost his leverage over the vampire Duke, but he will try to find new leverage over the mortal one. Then we face him together. Sebastian looked at her. This is not your fight. Everything that concerns you concerns me. We are married, remember, for real now. He smiled slightly. How could I forget? They sent word that Lord Hartley would be received the following afternoon. That night, lying in Rosa's bed for the first time, Sebastian marveled at the sensations he had forgotten. The softness of sheets, the warmth of another body beside him, the sweet, heavy pull of actual sleep beginning to claim him. I am afraid, he admitted in the darkness, of Hartley, of time, of aging, of dying. For over a century, I have not had to think about my own mortality. Now every moment counts. Every day brings me closer to an end. Rosa turned to face him. That is what makes life precious, Sebastian. The fact that it ends. If we had forever, nothing would matter. I suppose, he touched her face. I just found you. The thought of losing you again. Then do not waste time worrying about the end. Let us fill our days with joy, with love, with all the things you have missed. He pulled her close. You are very wise for someone so young. I am 23, practically ancient. He laughed, a real laugh, full and warm. And for the first time in over 100 years, Sebastian fell asleep in someone's arms. When Lord Hartley arrived the next day, he found a very different Duke than the one he had manipulated for a decade. Sebastian received him in the library, Rosa at his side. Hartley's eyes flicked between them, calculating. Your Grace, how well you look, positively glowing with health. Thank you, Edmund. Please sit. Hartley sat. His smile was sharp. I confess I was surprised by your invitation. We have not spoken privately in some time. We have not had reason to. No, though I imagine that has changed. Has it? Hartley leaned forward. Come now, Sebastian. We both know what has happened. The curse has broken. You are mortal again, which means you no longer need to fear exposure as a vampire, which means I have lost my hold over you. You never had a hold over me, Edmund. You had fear. There is a difference. A distinction without difference, I think. Hartley's eyes went cold. But I did not come here to argue semantics. I came to propose a new arrangement. I am listening. You vote as I wish in Parliament. In return, I do not reveal the truth about your former nature to the world. Oh, they might not believe you were actually a vampire. But the scandal alone, the whispers, the investigations into your unnaturally long life would destroy your reputation, your business interests, everything you have built. Sebastian was quiet for a moment. Then he stood. No. Hartley blinked. I beg your pardon. No, I will not vote as you wish. I will not be controlled by you any longer. You may tell the world whatever you like. I am done living in fear. Hartley's face darkened. You are making a mistake. Perhaps, but it is my mistake to make. And what of your wife, your new mortality? I could make life very difficult for you. Rosa stood as well. You could try, but you would find that the Duchess of Ravensmoor is not easily intimidated. Hartley looked at her for a long moment. Then he laughed, though there was no humor in it. How touching. True love conquers all. He stood. Very well. If you wish to throw away a century of survival for the sake of sentiment, that is your choice. But do not say I did not warn you when the consequences arrive. He left without another word. After the door closed, Sebastian turned to Rosa. He will try to destroy me now. Destroy us. Let him try. You are not afraid. Terrified, Rosa admitted, but not of Hartley, only of wasting the time we have on fear, Barbara, instead of joy. Sebastian pulled her into his arms. How did I survive so long without you? You did not survive. You existed. There is a difference, Barbara. He kissed her, and Rosa felt the warmth of him, the beating of his heart against hers. Outside, summer rain began to fall. And inside Ravensmoor Manor, two people who had been alone too long held each other and chose to be brave. The letter from Evie arrived a week later. Dearest Rosa, I have been accepted to exhibit at the Academy's summer show. Can you believe it? My paintings displayed alongside real artists. I am terrified and thrilled in equal measure. But that is not why I am writing. I have been thinking about you and the Duke, about the way he looked at you when I visited, about the way you looked at him when you thought no one was watching. I know your arrangement was supposed to end after a year. I know this was meant to be temporary. But Rosa, some things are not meant to be temporary. Some things are meant to last. Whatever happens, whatever you decide, I am proud of you. You saved me. You saved Papa. And now I think it is time you saved yourself. Choose happiness, sister. You deserve it. All my love. Evie. Rosa folded the letter and looked out at the gardens. 3 months had passed since her father died. 2 months since the curse broke. In that time, Sebastian had learned to eat again, to sleep, to feel the sun on his face without fear. He had also learned something else. One morning in late August, Rosa found him wincing as he rose from his chair. What is wrong? She asked. He rubbed his shoulder with a rueful expression. My shoulder aches. Mrs. Pemberton says it is likely age beginning to settle into my joints. He smiled, but there was something uncertain in it. I am becoming mortal in all the small, uncomfortable ways. Rosa crossed to him and kissed his temple. Good. That means you are alive. Even when it hurts. Especially then. Pain means you can feel, and feeling is everything. But she could see it troubled him. The physical reminders of mortality, the ways his body was changing, becoming ordinary, becoming human. That evening, she found him in the library, staring at a portrait of himself painted 50 years earlier. In the painting, he looked exactly as he did now, but now there were subtle changes. The corners of his eyes had faint creases. His skin no longer looked carved from marble. He was becoming human in all the ways that mattered. Do you ever regret it? Sebastian asked quietly, not looking away from the portrait. Breaking the curse. Choosing this. Never. Even though I will die. Everyone dies, Sebastian. The question is not whether but how. And I would rather you die loved and warm and human than exist forever cold and alone. He turned to look at her. You are very certain. I am. He took her hand. His fingers were warm now. Always warm. Then let us make a promise, he said. Whatever time we have, however long or short, we will not waste it on regret. We will fill it with joy. I promise. Even when I grow old and gray and forgetful. Especially then. Sebastian smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and made them warm. Then I suppose we should begin. Begin what? Living. He pulled her close and kissed her, and Rosa felt the steady beat of his heart against hers. Outside, autumn was approaching. The gardens would fade and dean and bloom again. Sebastian would age and eventually die and leave her. But for now, in this moment, they were alive and together, and that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. November arrived cold and clear. The day of the Parliament session dawned bright, the sky a hard blue that promised frost by evening. Rosa dressed carefully, a gown of deep burgundy that Lady Margaret had helped her choose. Simple but elegant, the kind of dress that commanded respect. She wore the ruby ring Sebastian had given her at their engagement, and around her neck a locket containing a miniature portrait of her father. For courage. Sebastian appeared in her doorway as she was fastening her earrings. In the morning light, she could see the changes 4 months of mortality had brought. A few silver threads in his dark hair, lines at the corners of his eyes when he smiled. He was becoming beautifully, perfectly human. You look magnificent, he said. I look terrified. That too. He crossed to her and took her hands. We can still leave. We could be on a ship to America by nightfall. Start over where no one knows us. Is that what you want? I want you to be safe. Then stay with me. Face this. Let me stand beside you. Sebastian studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. Very well. We face it together. They rode to London in silence. The countryside passed in a blur of bare trees and frozen fields. Rosa watched Sebastian from the corner of her eye. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched and unclenched in his lap. He was afraid. So was she. But fear, Rosa had learned, was not the enemy. Cowardice was. And neither of them were cowards. Parliament was already in session when they arrived. The great chamber was full of men in dark coats, their voices echoing off stone walls. Sebastian was announced, heads turned, conversations paused. Everyone knew something was coming. Rosa could feel it in the air, like electricity before a storm. Lord Hartley sat near the front, his expression pleasant. He nodded to Sebastian as they passed. The session began with routine business. Bills were discussed, votes were taken. Rosa sat in the gallery reserved for wives and daughters, watching everything with sharp attention. Then after an hour, Hartley rose to speak. My lords, I wish to raise a matter of some delicacy. It concerns the Duke of Ravensmore. The chamber went silent. Sebastian did not move, but Rosa saw his hands grip the arms of his chair. For some years now, Hartley continued smoothly, I have noticed certain irregularities regarding His Grace's affairs. Questions about his past, unexplained gaps in his history, and most troubling evidence suggesting that the Duke may not be entirely what he seems. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. I have here, Hartley produced a folder, documentation spanning over a century, portraits, legal records, witness statements, all suggesting that Sebastian Blackwood, Duke of Ravensmore, has not aged a single day in over 100 years. The murmurs grew louder. Furthermore, I have testimonies from former servants describing strange behavior. Refusal to eat, aversion to sunlight, unnatural coldness. Hartley's voice dropped. My lords, I submit that the Duke of Ravensmore is not human, that he is, in fact, a creature of darkness, a vampire. The chamber erupted. Some men laughed. Others looked shocked. Most looked confused. Sebastian stood slowly. My lords, he said quietly, his voice cut through the chaos. Lord Hartley is correct. Silence fell like a hammer. I was cursed to vampirism over a century ago. I have lived in shadow-drinking blood to survive unchanging and alone. He paused. But 4 months ago, the curse was broken. I am mortal now. Human. Lying, as you can see if you look closely. He turned his head, showing the gray at his temples, the lines forming around his eyes. I did not choose to be cursed. But I chose to break that curse. I chose mortality. I chose life. And I would make that choice again, knowing all the consequences. Hartley smiled coldly. A lovely story, Your Grace, but you admit to being a monster, to deceiving this chamber, this nation, for over a century. Surely such a creature has no place among civilized men. Sebastian opened his mouth to respond, but Rosa was faster. She stood in the gallery, every eye turned to her. "My lords," she said clearly, "I am Rosa Blackwood, Duchess of Ravensmore, and I have something to say." The Speaker of the House looked startled. "Madam, this is most irregular." "I know, but I beg your indulgence." She looked directly at Hartley. "Lord Hartley calls my husband a monster, a creature of darkness. But I know the truth, and I believe the truth matters more than fear." She descended from the gallery. Mrs. Pemberton had told her this was forbidden, that ladies never entered the chamber floor. But Rosa walked down anyway, her burgundy gown sweeping behind her like a banner. She stood beside Sebastian and took his hand. "My husband told me what he was before I agreed to marry him. He gave me a choice. He could have hidden it, lied, compelled me to accept him. But he did not. He was honest. Because despite what Lord Hartley claims, Sebastian Blackwood is not a monster. He is one of the most honorable men I have ever known." She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes, daring them to look away. Yes, he was cursed. Yes, he was vampire. But he never killed, never harmed innocents. He survived as best he could under impossible circumstances. And when he was given the chance to break that curse, he took it. Even knowing it meant giving up immortality. Even knowing it meant he would age and die like any man. Her voice strengthened. He chose mortality. He chose humanity. He chose love over eternity. If that is the action of a monster, then I pray more men would be such monsters. Silence. Then from the back of the chamber, someone began to clap. Lady Margaret Sinclair had entered. She applauded slowly, deliberately. Others joined her. Not all, not even most, but enough. Hartley's face darkened. "My lords, surely you are not swayed by a woman's sentiment. I am swayed by the truth." Lord Hertford stood. "I have known the Duke of Ravensmore for 10 years. I have seen his character, his generosity to his tenants, his fairness in business. If he was cursed, and if he broke that curse through love, then I say he deserves our respect, not our condemnation." More men stood. "I agree," said another lord. "Vampirism is a curse, not a crime. If he is mortal now, what does his past matter?" Lord Hartley seems more interested in revenge than justice. Hartley's control slipped. "You are all fools. He is a creature of darkness." "Was," Sebastian said quietly. "I was. Now I am simply a man, flawed, aging mortal, just like you, Edmund." The two men stared at each other. Then Sebastian spoke again, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "You have held this over me for 10 years, threatening, manipulating, controlling. I let you because I was afraid of exposure, afraid of losing everything I had built. But I am not afraid anymore." He squeezed Rosa's hand. "Because I have something more valuable than reputation or wealth or immortality. I have love, real love, and that is worth any price." He turned to address the chamber. "I will not vote as Lord Hartley wishes. I will vote my conscience. And if this chamber decides I am unfit to serve because of what I was, I will accept that judgment. But I will not live in fear anymore." The speaker cleared his throat. "My lords, this is an unprecedented situation. I propose we take a vote. Should the Duke of Ravensmore retain his seat and privileges despite his admitted past as a vampire?" The vote was called. Rosa held her breath. Hands rose. She counted frantically. When it was done, the speaker announced the result. By a margin of 43 to 27, the Duke of Ravensmore retains his seat. Relief flooded through Rosa so powerfully she swayed. Sebastian caught her, held her steady. They had won. Hartley stood frozen, his face white with rage. Then he turned and walked from the chamber without another word. It was over. That evening back at Ravensmore, Sebastian and Rosa stood in the garden, watching stars appear one by one. "We did it," Rosa said softly. "You did it. I was ready to run. But you stayed. Because of you." He turned to face her. "Rosa, I have been thinking. Our arrangement, our marriage, it was supposed to end in December. 1 year and then freedom." Rosa's heart clenched. "Yes, I do not want it to end. Neither do I." "Then let us make it real. Not an arrangement, not a bargain, a true marriage." He took both her hands. "Marry me again, in spring when the gardens bloom. A real wedding with Evie and Margaret and everyone we care about. Marry me because you choose to, not because you have to." Tears blurred Rosa's vision. "Yes, yes, of course, yes." He kissed her under the stars, and Rosa tasted salt from her own tears and sweetness from his lips. They would marry again. In spring, in daylight and color and joy. A beginning, not an ending. The second wedding took place in June, exactly 1 year and 3 months after the first. Not in a cold church with strangers watching, but in the garden at Ravensmoor, surrounded by roses and lavender and everyone they loved. Evie served as bridesmaid, beaming with joy. Lady Margaret wept openly. Mrs. Pemberton dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. Sebastian wore gray, the color of his eyes. Rosa wore white silk embroidered with tiny lavender flowers. When the vicar asked if they took each other, their voices rang clear. I do. I do. The kiss was not formal, not distant. It was real and warm and full of promise. Afterward, there was dancing and cake and champagne. Sebastian danced with Rosa until the stars came out, never wanting to let her go. As the evening wound down, Lady Margaret pulled Rosa aside. You look radiant, my dear, positively glowing. Rosa smiled. She had discovered 3 weeks ago that she was with child. She had been carrying the secret like a precious jewel, waiting for the right moment to tell Sebastian. Not tonight. Tonight was about celebration. But soon. I am happy, Rosa said simply. Margaret squeezed her hand. You deserve it. Both of you do. That night, after the guests had gone, Rosa and Sebastian sat in the gazebo watching the moon rise. Rosa took Sebastian's hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. There is something I need to tell you, she said. Sebastian looked at her, his expression shifting from contentment to concern. What is it? Do not be frightened. Be happy. We are going to have a baby. He went completely still. Then his eyes filled with tears. A baby, he whispered. Rosa, I never thought, I never dared hope. I know. He slid from the bench to kneel before her, pressing his face against her stomach. For over a century I was frozen, unchanging, unable to create anything new. And now we have made a life. His voice broke. A new life. From love. Rosa ran her fingers through his hair, feeling the silver strands mixed with dark. We made a miracle, she said softly. They sat together in the moonlight, planning a future neither had believed possible a year before. The baby came in late January, and on a morning when frost touched the windows and the world seemed to hold its breath. The labor was long but not terrible. Mrs. Pemberton and the midwife worked tirelessly. Sebastian paced in the corridor outside, looking more terrified than he had ever been facing Parliament. Evie had come from Paris. She sat with him, holding his hand. She is strong, Evie said. She will be fine. You cannot know that. I know my sister. She has survived everything life has thrown at her. She will survive this too. At dawn, a baby's cry pierced the air. Sebastian was on his feet immediately. The door opened. Mrs. Pemberton emerged smiling. Your Grace, you have a daughter. Sebastian's knees nearly gave out. Rosa, tired but well, she is asking for you. He entered the room like a man in a dream. Rosa lay in bed, her hair damp with sweat, her face pale but smiling. And in her arms, wrapped in soft white linen, was the smallest, most perfect creature Sebastian had ever seen. Come meet your daughter, Rosa said softly. Sebastian crossed to them on shaking legs. He looked down at the tiny face, the delicate fingers, the wisp of dark hair. She is beautiful, he whispered. Would you like to hold her? I am afraid I will break her. You will not. Rosa placed the baby in his arms. Sebastian held her with the reverence of a man cradling a miracle. The baby opened her eyes. Hazel eyes like his were now. Hello, little one, he said, his voice rough with tears. I am your papa, and I promise you I will love you every day I have left. The baby made a small sound. Sebastian laughed through his tears. What should we name her? Rosa asked. I thought perhaps Annabelle, after your mother. Rosa's eyes filled. That is perfect. The years that followed were ordinary in the best possible way. Annabelle grew into a bright, curious child with her mother's intelligence and her father's quiet intensity. The manor filled with laughter and noise and life. Sebastian aged. The gray spread through his hair until it was more silver than dark. Lines deepened around his eyes and mouth. Rosa aged too. She found her first gray hair when Annabelle was 3, laughed about it, then cried a little when Sebastian kissed it and said she was more beautiful now than the day they met. They were growing old together, and it was everything. Years later, when their hair was fully silver and Annabelle had grown and married and given them grandchildren, they would sometimes sit in the garden and remember. Remember the rain and the arrangement. Remember the curse and the breaking. Remember the fear and the choice. And they would hold hands, these two old people who had loved each other through impossible circumstances, and they would smile because they had chosen love over fear, mortality over eternity. life over mere existence. And that choice had made all the difference. In the end, it always did. The condition the Duke had wanted no one to accept was not about marriage or duty or appearance. It was about accepting something impossible, about loving something that should not exist, about choosing to break a curse even when breaking meant losing what you loved. Rosa had accepted. She had loved. She had chosen. And in doing so, she had saved them both. Not from death, but from a life not worth living. And that, as it turned out, was the only salvation that mattered.